yesterday, by chance, I had a cup of coffee with my friend here in Scottsdale, and he was negotiating. He showed me the operating agreement and the legal agreement for he's buying into 50% of a specialty dental practice. And this is not a deal I was putting together or anything, but he just came to me and said, hey, well, what do you see here? What would you look at? And he's going to be, paying around $1 million for half of this practice. And I said, well, one thing is, I know specific to the medical industry that sometimes there's a blue sky law that allows you to write off like goodwill on a practice over, I think it's 7 years. You'll have to go verify that, I told him, but that allows him to get a little bit more tax efficiency in the deal. Also, if there's dental equipment and chairs and x-ray equipment and lab equipment in there, out of the $1 million he's putting in is $250,000 of that attributed to equipment value. Because if so, we're going to get to the bonus depreciation part. There might be potential for him to be able to write off part of the investment. And the important point about this is that the seller is going to carry a note for him. So he's able to put down just 50, 100, or 200,000 and then work off the rest as a percentage of his work as a dentist. And so if you think about it, and he's going to charge him 0% interest to do so, I said, well, for sure, take the free money, only put down the 50 in my mind. Don't put down 200,000. But see if there's equipment, because imagine that there's 150,000 of equipment. And if he did qualify to bonus depreciate and write off that equipment, if those assumptions were right, he might save $70,000 to $80,000 in cash out of his pocket during this tax year and only put $50,000 down to buy the practice. And he's net positive $30,000 cash in his pocket. And now he has acquired 50% of the practice. He still has to work off the payment plan on the other part, but at 0% interest. That's an example of something that just happened yesterday. I wasn't planning to mention today, but just meeting with him for 30 minutes, not being a CPA myself, I said, well, here's some things to investigate, and having your flags go up like, hey, this has potential. Let me talk to a CPA and see what the real deal is here. And be careful taking advice from anyone such as myself, who's not a CPA, who's not a tax expert. We're going to have Will Duffy on, who only does tax, advisory pretty much for clients. And that's all he does. But I would get two opinions on big deals where there's big numbers involved. And you can get guidance from people like myself of, hey, this exists, this might exist, et cetera. But don't go promising things to investors without checking in with a true professional in the space. This is me sharing what I've been learning along the way. The final part of that story from yesterday is, by chance, I got an email yesterday from a nonprofit, and they'll give an in-kind donation receipt to dentists who work on former prison inmates or homeless people and give them a mouth makeover so they can get a job and turn their life around. The dentist would usually charge $30,000 for that type of a case. So they'll give them an in-kind donation receipt of $30,000 each time they do one of these big cases for them. And if they do 10 of those cases a year, they might get $300,000 in charitable gifts to help on write-offs on their taxes. And I told them there might be a limit to that. I don't know. I'm not the tax expert, but that's something to look into. And that's just an example of how you can apply some of the things we're going to talk about here today to just about any deal you do. There's going to be some angle where something could be either be made tax efficient, or you take it from a tax efficient structure like a self-directed IRA. So I am interested in this area for a couple of reasons we're going to cover in just a second. But this is one of the reasons why pretty much every investor cares about tax efficiency and wants to do things in a slightly more intelligent, tax efficient nature than they have been before. If they've been writing or any investor who can write a check for a couple $100,000 or more pays a good amount of taxes as a general rule. And a lot of investors don't have their tax or estate planning dialed in. So it's a way that you can add value to other investors, or a way for you to become wealthier yourself if you are an investor faster and have your wealth compound faster, is by having your investments be more efficient over time. So while that seems obvious, a lot of people don't do tax diligence on their deals. A lot of investors don't spend the time conducting the research on this, because we're all busy and it's nuanced, and nobody really enjoys meeting with lawyers or CPAs typically. So it just doesn't get done in a lot of people's busy schedules. Also, all else equal, if you're debating between two deals and one is tax efficient and another is not, it'll help you decide which deal to do. Because one example is a deal that we closed recently that was a 1.5 times return for the investor. So they get a 50% return on their money, but it was made to be super tax efficient. So the math changed to 2.3 times return on their money, because instead of putting 100,000 in, with the tax efficient nature of it, they were essentially only putting $60,000 in. So when you get 1.5 times $100,000, that's $150,000. $60,000 times two is $120,000. You're now getting 2.3 times your money back instead of 1.5 times. And importantly, the cost of capital to the company who structured that deal is still that 50% return over so many years. They're not having the high cost of a 2.3 times return to their investor. Their costs remain the same, but because it was made tax efficient, the returns go up for the investor. This is why the workshop is structures and tax strategies, because how you structure something can impact the taxation of it, and the tax nature of how you structure something could be the most important component of the structure.